Hello, my Life Forces people. Welcome back to the podcast. Always so happy and grateful to have you here. This week's episode, this week's guest, incredible, top, chef's kiss, etc. None other than my astrology teacher, who I've learned with before, who I'm currently learning relationship astrology with, Giorgia Pecora. She is a relationship, karmic, and transgenerational astrologer known for her practical, holistic, deep, and fun approach to helping individuals navigate life's complexities. She also leads an engaging online astrological school, I totally agree with that description, called Visionaire Astrology, where she imparts astrological wisdom using creative techniques with a community-oriented approach. Yes. Giorgia is a fantastic, fantastic teacher. She has many, many years of formal teaching experience in addition to her astrology school, which has been around for a decent amount of time by now. And she is really good at fostering a community atmosphere. She's really good at teaching. She is so funny, but knowledgeable as well. We had such a great time. I don't even know how long we talked for. Let me see once I edit this episode. But we spoke about relationships, obviously astrology in so many different ways, karma, rebirth, transgenerational dynamics. And we also talked about astrology for entrepreneurs and how to use your chart to align your business. And I actually asked her some questions about my chart, even though I've explored this a little bit before. We really just had such a great, deep conversation. Like, there were times where things went in a certain direction and I was like so flabbergasted I didn't know how to continue, but in the best way possible. And yeah, she's just an amazing, wise astrologer, teacher. We talked a little bit about Scorpio energy, Sagittarius energy, dynamics with other people. I don't even know. I don't even know. It was just really both far out and fun, but also very grounded and down to earth. Because although Giorgia doesn't really have any earth energy in her chart, she does manage to make certain things very practical and digestible, which I appreciate. So I know you're going to love this episode so much. I also invite you to check out Giorgia's offers. The links to her website and Instagram are in the show notes. Her Instagram is amazing. She has fantastic astrology memes, but also just so much knowledge that's going to really clear things up for you. She's got great webinars, which I've been to. I attended an amazing one about the planet Jupiter earlier this year. She offers a variety of sessions, just for you, for a relationship, also for your business, tons of different stuff, courses, of course, and even retreats. So dig into this episode. You're probably going to want to take notes. You'll probably listen to this more than once. I know I will. I'm really looking forward to listening back to this one. And yeah, see you on the other side. I think, to be honest, this might be my last episode of 2023. So take it in, baby. You're going to love it. And I appreciate all of you for listening, for supporting me this year, the first year of the podcast. We're going to have so much fun, so much cool stuff next year. I can't wait. Not only on the podcast, but in my business. I'll be back because I've kind of taken a break from client stuff and all that, but we're recalibrating. It's going to be great. I'm going to hibernate a little bit, work on my own little creative things, big creative things. I don't want to diminish it. And then we'll be back next year. So let's dive into this amazing episode with Giorgia Pecora, astrologer extraordinaire, and wishing you all the best. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Life Forces. I'm your host, Bianca, and I'm so excited to be here with my astrology teacher extraordinaire, Giorgia Pecora. How are you today? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm very good. I was sharing, I just got some good news that I can't share yet, but yeah. So life is nice. We survived the eclipse season. New moon in Scorpio has been a bit miserable. So there is a light. There is a light, Bianca, at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I'm a little apprehensive about the Mars Kazemi vibes, but let's see what happens with that.
I love people. People are like, they're speaking Japanese. Yeah, we do, but we can translate. It's like, for me, it's Mars Kazemi. For me, it's been the Sun opposition, Uranus. Yeah, we've been in a bit of a turmoil. Like, generally, everyone is a bit over the top. Yeah, so handle with care, I suppose. How this Mars Kazemi has been playing out for you?
I mean, I felt there was, the Mars Uranus opposition vibes I've definitely been feeling. With me, kind of like just silly accidents and stuff. But then I was telling you before we started recording, like a few of my friends have been like really injured, like hospital, have to take off work injured. And like my close friends, not like people I vaguely knew. I'm just, it's a lot. And I'm just like, everyone be careful out there with all this Mars stuff.
Yeah, in my case, that's the thing. When we're looking at these transits, of course, they play a different role for each person in relationship to your natal chart. That is this drawing that you have when you're born. And in my case, it was in the house of information, education. And I was about, I just wrote this very long thing that I wanted to share on Instagram. And then I look at it, I was looking at the transits. I'm like, no, we are not doing this today. You're being inched. Just breathe through that, go to the gym and just, you be fine. But yeah, so that's the thing that I like about astrology, because I reread it yesterday, was like, oh dear. Okay, there was a bit, a lot.
It was a little spicy.
Yeah, very, very spicy. I think, I'm spicy in general. I don't mind sharing my opinion, but there are also these moments in which you just, you act as a trigger, because that's Mars is about, right? So it's what is triggering us. And Uranus is the things that are a bit unpredictable. So there are like these triggers that it got a bit out of place. It's like, okay, maybe that's not the place for that. And, even with your friends, maybe get it injured. Maybe they have some other sort of frustration and they just put it in the body instead of a person. And then the body just, that's, yay.
Yeah.
I could work.
Yeah. Both of them, I think, were very unexpected, like very Uranian situations. So yeah, it all really checks out. Yeah. How else has your Scorpio season been going? Have you discovered anything, recovered anything?
So disclaimer, I don't like Scorpio season. Can I say that? Say that. So I've been working with, it's going to be all like that. Just like, whatever. I mean, you know me, you invited me. It's just like, yeah, it's going to be, we just have to surrender, I suppose. But I've been working with each season for years, right? I started like in 2016. And the idea is that for each season, there are some activity that you could do or some things that are just going to be awakened in your life, right? But when you're asking me about the Scorpio Taurus axis, every year, like I've been sick every year because, Scorpio has to do also with our DNA and the way in which we defend ourselves. I've been sick every year for the last 5 years. So I had COVID twice, Scorpio season. Then I had chickenpox. I had chickenpox at the age of 32, not recommended, not fun. Then I got like some sort of infection. This year I got, I think, like some weird, I don't know what that is, but I haven't been able to speak until last week, pretty much. So it's been intense. It's this really more this realization is like, how do you deal with the depth of your body? Because in my case, it's to do with the 8th and the 9th house. And really questioning, where you're pushing, also the things that you want to say. Because I was seeing like this cuffing and I was just observing. It was like, okay, something that's to do with something that I'm thinking. And then every time I had readings, there would be no cuffing. And I was like, how weird is that? I'm cuffing all day, but when I'm working and I'm talking about something that I find relevant, it just disappears. And then it appears again. So I just been observing how and when the voice comes out. So Scorpio season.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would love to go back a little bit to talk about how you really started getting into astrology, how you knew it was something you wanted to study and then ultimately share with people. I'm super curious about that.
Okay, so I can give you a romantic story because people think it's like, wow, my auntie was an astrologer and she read my cards and she had also tarot. None of it. So I'm from Sicily, I was born in Sicily, super working class family, get a job, go to university, have children, just despite, so my parents are quite eclectic people, an ascendant in Aquarius, a moon in Aquarius. But I knew I wanted to do this, I think, when I was 13. I always had this big interest into 12th house spiritual studies. I used to read like I was Taoist when I was 14. I was super much into crystals, tarot. I used to do tarot at school. That's how it started. And they would call my mom and they would be like, your daughter can do tarot at school. That's inappropriate. I was like, right. So I was reading around there and I was looking at the charts of my friends. So I looked at my chart for the first time when I was 13, and it was a bit traumatic because, I use Google, and for people here, we got houses, we got areas of life in which things will happen. And I got lots of planets in the areas that are very karmic, transformational, 8th house, 12th house. And when you read some things online out of context, the 12th house is the house of shamanism and magic and collective and dreams. But it's also the house of prisons, hospitals, addictions, fears, hidden enemies. And when you read that, there was this kind of written report that would say that basically I was screwed. It was like, great, half of my chart is in this place and cool. So I just didn't know how to navigate that. And then I thought, maybe I could use it for these things, and every time I would read about astrology or tarot, I would just get like so absorbed, like by the symbolic language. So I wanted to go to this kind of school in Italy when I was 18, but it was quite expensive. So I went to uni instead because people are like, it's not a thing. I mean, being astrologer is not a thing. First, then like most people don't believe in that. And in general, like people don't think you can make a living out of it. I think you can make a living out of any profession. If you ask me, it depends how you structure it. But so then I did uni, I did a postmaster, I was deep in the academia for 7 years. And I just was not happy because I was teaching, I'm a teacher, but I was teaching the wrong subject. So I taught Italian for many years and intercultural learning. And then I went back to astrology. So I was doing private classes and I was reading the charts of my students in Italian. So I was like, this is going to help your Italian skills. And then I was a reporter and then I was traveling with my colleagues and I would read the chart of my boss, and then I was like, you are really passionate about it. Like it's really your thing, So I would do a reading for my boss and then I would go back reporting and just feeling like my soul just like, and be like, oh my God, okay, so I want to leave. And then I joined this Astro Cafe in Berlin. I met other astrologers and they were like, you just have to do it, So I went to school, went back to school for a millionth time, and there I am.
Love it. Okay. I didn't know it went so far back for you. That's so interesting. I mean, what was it like when you decided that's what you wanted to stick with? Like, how did your family react? Because I know a little bit about the Southern Italian cultural context.
Yeah. That was its whole journey, because one of the things I specialize is family dynamics and lineage. So I think one thing that really changed everything, I read this book about the 12th house. It was in 2015. And that night I couldn't sleep. So I found this thing. I was at the Astro Cafe. This colleague of mine, she was like, you should read this book. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm taking this book. It's talking about the fact, if your planet's in the 12th house, is connected with your ancestry, with your lineage, or for example, from a family constellation perspective, sometimes you are taking the mission of another family member, or there is an unexpressed talent. Long story short, I'm reading this book. I can't sleep. I'm just writing. I'm having this social realization about life, literally. And because I was born straight after my grandpa died, And I could see with our charts, Pluto is exactly on my north node. Like there is a connection. So I was like, okay, I have to dig on my grandpa's story. So I sent that night an email to my father. I was just literally channeling. I was just like until 5 a.m. And I just literally wrote the story of my real life to my father. I was like, look, this is the version, this is what happened. And by the way, I just think I want to change my life. I want to do this thing. If you're fine, great. If you're not fine, great. I don't care. And the interesting thing was the reaction, because I wasn't this really defensive, self-built story of it. And my father was like, I mean, I know you're clever. So if you think you like it, go for it. If you can if you can pay the rent out of it, sure. And I'm like, almost in this Martian position, be like, oh, okay, that's it. So he asked me to see what I do, because it's like, it was so sweet, because then he looked at my Facebook page, he read like what I'm doing, and he's like, I read this thing of shamanism, how that works. And I gave him a reading in the kitchen. It was at my parents' place. We had this reading that lasts like 2.5 hours probably. And I told him, I'm going to treat you as a client. I think, this is a student. One of the most common misconceptions is when we work in the courses and we look at other people's charts, people look at parents and family thinking it's the easiest one. These are the most difficult one to deal with, because you're absorbed, you are part of the dynamic, to keep a certain kind of distance is very difficult. But the reading, that changed everything, because like we had a conversation, we talk openly about things. My father talked about his mom not like being my grandmother, just like the experience he had, how this translated with my mom. And after he saw my work, he was like, this stuff is great, do it. It was like, I think it's gonna help people. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, that had moments. Like the first, because I've been having my astrology business for 7 years now. The first years I was working part-time, so the transition was a bit, no, slow. It took the time it took. Because again, when you have a business, now you watch things online and people are like, build your business in 3 months. Like, guys, now it works. Like I've been working on my own, like it's 15 years now. It's long, there is sacrifice, Saturn speaking here. So the first 2 years they were a bit concerned, and they're always asking me like, why don't you find a job in an office? But then we talked about money. Like, I make more than my father. So it was like, I'm making a good income. So what is the real problem here? You're not entrepreneurs. I get it, but I'm good. But I have to reassure them from time to time.
Yeah. Makes sense. And yeah, I'm curious, did the entrepreneurship part of you always come naturally, or is that something you kind of uncovered in yourself?
I always had it. I have Mars from Miami, Devon. So, I'm also explaining for those who speak astrology here. So Mars, is what is pushing you. And this in my house of profession. It's like he's literally in the highest professional point he could be. That it makes me think also very stupid things before time. Let's not over romanticize, because Mars is like, yeah, let's do this yesterday. So it put me in trouble several times. But I've always been very enthusiastic. Like all my life, I've been doing my own thing. Just like I work very shortly for others. I realized it was not my cup of tea. I've always been arranging things in which I was leading, but I've always been asked to lead. It's like, for example, in Italy, we got this thing that I don't know if it's the same in other countries. Like, for example, you can vote the student president. So basically, your students are voting, and you got these two people. They're going to represent the school. They're going to talk to the responsible for whatever activities they're going to do during the year. And I got voted as the president for 3 years in a row. Like it was like 14, like it was 15, 16, 17. And then it turned into Pecora dictatorship. It was like, this is just literally turning into, and I'm like, guys, you're asking me to be here. I'm doing it. If there is something to just say something about it, it just comes. So yeah. So I was in this very political act, like a demo, the one screaming from the track.
Yeah.
Me. Then I realized it was like, okay, this is not the way in which I want to express it. But yeah, so I think always has been in me this sort of energy, I suppose. Oh dear.
Yeah.
When I explain this aloud, I'm like, okay. Especially as a woman, that's also the issue. Just like when you go strong Mars signatures, the problem is that when you look at astrology, you have to look at the lenses of culture. So we are in a culture that is dividing, like, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. But in our personal charts, we all have Mars and Venus, but we are dealing with this polarity in a way that is very problematic. Because if you're a woman like me and you have a strong Mars initiating, drive, assertive energy, it's problematic for other people just because. And I know that if I would be Giorgio instead of Georgia, it just would have been a way faster and easier. I mean, it's just factual. So I think that's the reason why it's been a bit of an issue. It's more to inhabit this energy as a woman.
Yeah. How the gender thing all plays into it for sure. Yeah. What else do I want to talk about? So many things. I don't even know.
I'm here. I got tea.
We got the tea. We're sharing tea, everything. Yeah. Let's talk about the earlier years of your astrology business. What were some of the mistakes you made, honestly? Or what would you have done different? Or were there ways that you maybe sabotaged yourself or held yourself back that you've been realizing?
All of it. I got all of it. I can share lots of failings, mess, and other things. So I registered my business. So I went to the finance office in Germany, 2017. That was the beginning. So first 2 years, I was doing things part-time. So I was working part-time in this restaurant. I was an accountant, the worst accountant Germany ever seen. Like so bad. But, my friend was working there. She was like, you need a job. It's very easy. And like super stressful, but it was very helpful because I was learning accounting, because I was struggling. But then I'm like, okay, this is how I work with invoices and how to arrange the week. And I like to set the payments. So I was unconsciously setting the skills that I would have needed afterwards. But at the time, I was not so grateful, to be honest with you, because I was doing this thing in the morning and then I was working in the afternoon. I was giving readings for free for 1 year. The first year, I was just doing readings to, literally anyone. Like, you want a reading? I'll give you a reading. And I think it was a bit of an overstretch in the first 2 years, probably first year, in terms of setting how much to charge. Because I'm like, I'm starting small, that's fine. But now I'm also looking back and I was not charging enough because of a narrative that I had around learning, meaning I was studying. So I was part of this school. So I was doing the certification. And I think, I love certificates. I love schools. I have tons of it. I'm addicted to that. But I don't think that they define your worth. Like, it's very important to have teachers, like, Saturn. It's very important to go to a certain track, but there is also another element that you have to consider in the meantime. Because, for example, for me with teaching, when I start teaching, because people ask me to do that, I had a previous 8 years of experience in teaching. And I was just thinking like in this compartment, I'm like, I know in this field, so I'm ignoring all the other skills that I have. So I can literally, I was charging, I think like €13 per class for like classes and materials. Like, now I think of it, I'm like, it's not even how much a bartender takes, whatever waiter takes without the tips in Germany. And that's a very difficult work as well, but it's different kind of work. You know what I'm trying to say here. So I think it was first under evaluating other sets of skills that I had. So I'm just really thinking in these blocks. But it was, I think lots of things for me were easier because I get business consultants from the very beginning. I was doing exchange with clients. So 2 years in, I was having all these ideas. And then I had this session with this Taurus Virgo rising woman because I don't have any earth in my chart. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to look for people who are going to help with that. And she gave me the biggest kick in the ass. And I was physically suffering, but I knew what was happening. Because she was like, okay, if you want to do this, you have to change your attitude in this, and that. Because I was having this issue, like, I want to make the world a better place, very Aquarius Pisces. I want to help everyone, absolutely not taking care of what were my needs. It's like, how do I make this sustainable for myself? So I was always stretching myself all over the place, not charging enough, readings lasting longer. And that would be like, so I can prove my client that I'm good enough, If it's 1.5 hours and then 2 hours, and then I'm like, now I can see how much I was not respecting my time. So there was a wound with self-worth that the first 2 years I really had to sell with. Because then it turned into frustration. I was working a lot. I was seeing the impact my work was having, and I was not making much money anyway. I'm like, I can't sustain this because it's a work that is energetically draining. I can't have 5 readings a day. My readings are, people always cry. We talk about abortion, loss, grief. I don't talk about the 2 topics. It's like people just come and they feel like, I can tell you things I never told anyone before. My father left me when I was 2. You don't want to have this like a lot during the day because then you need to decompress. Mm-hmm. So I think this was the first issue, lack of self-worth. Working with business consultant, super, super helpful. Other thing, trying to force some things, even if I didn't want to do it, for the fear of, not doing enough or not making enough money. Again, some lack of flexibility around thinking. For example, I've been doing all these beginners courses. And then during one, people just didn't roll. So I went from like 25, 26 people, 17 people to 4. And that was a massive ego shock. I was like, wow, because that's the problem. Don't identify yourself with your work. I am not my astrological course. I am not my website. I'm not any of it. I didn't know. So when that happened, big ego lesson. Saturn was exact on my sun. And I'm like, okay, what happened there? And to be honest with you, I just couldn't really sort it out at the time. And then I worked with this other woman to help me with the marketing. Very, very prepared person. She has this 100% success with whatever project she takes in. She loved my project. We did the promotion, next course. We barely made it. I got like students that will cover the expenses to all this marketing thing that I tried to do. And basically I did a full course making like €70 as a plus.
Yeah.
That hurts. It really does. And I had to sit with that. And, even with sharing about this, it's just like, it's fine. Just because it's like, okay, it goes up and down. And then I just look this in bigger terms because I work with philosophy. I work with cycles. Like my work is literally tracking time. And I'm like, okay, it's just going to be like this constantly. And that's fine. The question is how I'm going to deal with going down. It's just like, okay, here, something has to change. I know the product is good. I'm having good feedback from my students. And then I realized I just didn't want to do the course in that way anymore. Because I'm like, I've been teaching this for years. I don't want to repeat the same things. I want to get more connection with my students. So I found a new format. And now that I got a new format, it works perfectly. But I think it's been lots not to attach to whatever that is, because it was this moment of crisis. And I think the last thing that comes to my mind, because, I have to be honest, I like to do business. I'm good in doing business. I don't think it's the kind of difficult spot of my life, Probably the difficult bits are somewhere else. because it's like I've been investing and investment comes back. So if I can give more of a suggestion is that, just like put the money in if it's realistic, because now, I'm also seeing very crazy prices for classes or whatever. Don't get tricked by the price, because sometimes people just overcharge for no reason or undercharge for no reason. But if you don't put a seed in some sort of shape, nothing's going to grow out of it. And sometimes I have a bit this feeling, like when I did my first course, I was really not doing good economically. And like for weeks, the thing like you're eating potatoes sort of thing. That was the vibe. I was not going out much. I was going to the market on Tuesday, Turkish market in Berlin, buying like lots of vegetables and just, cooking things for the week. And then I asked my sister, just like, can you just lend me 500 euros? And once I got this sorted, I'm just going to give it back to you. And I just gave her the money like the month after or something. That's the commitment. So I think a business is not for everyone. I think being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. The idea that we're giving people that everyone could do this anytime. You see this in the chart. I literally have the signature of the entrepreneur. Like my chart screams, do your thing. You are good at it. Or work for people and be super resentful because you have lots of ideas. You want to do things on your own. Just do things on your own. We solve the issue. Because there is lots of uncertainty. If you think about, the state like is covering the insurance. You don't have issues about the idea of retiring. The boundaries around time are very clearly defined, because sometimes you bring your work home, of course. Sometimes I get an email at midnight. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look at this now, but you don't have this at the office. So there are lots of other advantages, but it's lots of constant nervous system regulation. So if you're not very self-disciplined, just give it a thought before going the road.
Yes. So many good points you bring up. And I think, yes, there's a lot of coaches, personalities, whatever out there that are, trying to say you can have a whatever business in 3 months. Maybe, but that's not very Saturnian. I don't know how Saturn feels about those kind of approaches. And yeah, it will always take time and commitment, even if you have some success or luck in the beginning, for sure. And I really also like what you said about earlier in your business, you doing a lot of exchanges with people who had skills that you didn't have. Because I think that's something that people don't necessarily think of right away. And it's something I've definitely leveraged with what I'm doing. Because yeah, I didn't necessarily have X amount of money to invest in a marketing person, but I do have a friend that's really good at marketing and we can exchange, right? So like that's a really good way, especially when you're starting out, to work on the things or get support for the things that you're not amazing at, because, people have lots of talents, but we can't possibly be really good at everything, period, you know?
If you don't like give some, like spread the power around people around you, delegate. This is the word I was looking for. Thank you, George. If you don't delegate, it's not sustainable. Because as you said, we talk about Saturn and longevity, because also you could have this moment, Jupiterian, the right time at the right place, but as it comes, as it goes, then with time, you really see how you cope with things. But if I would have had this business consultants, even with because I've always been doing my marketing, then I work with this person. And, it was so interesting because technically we failed, because it was just like, we didn't get any of the numbers we thought. And it was the only time I worked with a marketing person. And then I went back just to do my own thing with these new lenses, because at the same time, she showed me like lots of tools that I haven't thought about. That again, I can think about myself, because it's also true though, there are lots of free resources online, but these resources take time. And that's the issue. Sometimes people like, I have an assistant that deals with all the boring automatization stuff. Capricorn, bless Hilaria. I can do it, but the question is, do I want to spend my time doing this, or do I want to spend my time doing something else in which I'm better, I'm faster, and I'm supposed to do? So it's not just about the things you're not good at. It's actually the things that someone else can do without you. So you can take a bit the weight out of your shoulders. Like, you're not going to win the prize if you're just going to break your back. No one is going to give you the prize. Just
Yeah, 100%. That's for the Capricorn Saturnian people.
I'm one of those, just like Saturn is very strong in my chart, but I really see also the limits of it. Because it's like, okay, are you doing this to make your life better, or are you making your life miserable? Because if that's the case, and when I see the strong Capricorns, it's like, I don't want to say things like, it's not about destination, it's the journey. But actually it is, like, because that's sad, sad is like, okay, that's the goal. But dude, if you're not gonna enjoy on the way, I mean, this is gonna be painful. And we don't want that, we're born to suffer. It's okay, but we don't have to make everything about suffering, right?
Yeah, please. Yeah. Lead into Jupiter once in a while, for sure. So, yeah, I guess we've kind of indirectly been talking about we've directly been talking about business, but kind of indirectly about relationships. And obviously that's something very relevant to me now because I'm currently in your relationship astrology course, which is a lot of fun. And I've been learning so much. What got you particularly interested in that part of astrology? And especially, I know you've done a lot of research on, you've looked at so many people's charts like through that lens and kind of come up with your own stuff. So I'd love if you could share some of that with us.
So since it's about love, it started with a breakup. You have to experience that, right? In order to you have to go through certain initiations. I had this long relationship. This is a moment in which, like, you're getting older. It's like, it was 14 years ago. So 14 years ago, I started this thing. Like, Jesus. So I was in this relationship. I got cheated on and we broke up. I was heartbroken. It was, the first big love of my life. We were madly in love. And that took something, out of me. Then I moved and it was very chaotic. So I went through lots of initiations about life around that topic. And I felt the need to dig the topic of sexuality. Like, I was in Berlin. Berlin is a perfect place for that. But really with these research lenses, because I started studying astro shamanism, so in shamanic practices, and then I found this teacher that was teaching shamanic BDSM, because I was like, how do you put these two things together? So I did several trainings in lots of modalities. So lots of things that has to do with the BDSM, energetics, sex magic. And then I started to work with sex workers. So because they'll come to me, of course, I won't judge them. And then, I was talking to sex workers. And then I decided, since I was, normal people read a book. I'm like, I'm interested in a topic. I'm just going to study this for the next 10 years and see how it goes. So I decided to get certified as sexological body worker. I don't know because there was this special on Netflix. Someone was talking about that. So out of the blue, now we are popular for some reason. I don't know. But there is someone talking about it online. So it's about understanding the erotic blueprint of a person, right? So when I applied to the course, I'm like, listen, I don't want to be a traditional sexological body worker. I'm an astrologer that wants to work with sexological body work from an astrological point of view. And they were like, yeah, this is the first time. Why not? Sure, just join. So I did the full course. It's very much hands-on because you learn like about anatomy is very Virgo. Anatomy is super strict. You have to do more than 27 sessions hands-on on people. So you work about consent and emotions and distance and genitals and all of it. So I specialize myself in scars, like what a scar is keeping you in the body. There are very specific way to massage a scar and deliver the pain of it. So I did that, and that messed with my brain. because I studied two things that were literally the polarities. Because, with the BDSM, we have this impact energy, and sexological bodywork is literally Taurus. It's like Scorpio, Taurus stuff. It's about movement, breath, and expression and sound and slowness. It's about taking your time. So I'm like, okay, so I learned this, and literally now I'm learning that in order to connect with yourself, you have to do exactly the opposite. Great. So I decided just to stop in the middle of it. I'm like, I'm seeing the whole thing. And then I start to put this in my astrological sessions. So I start doing, because I specialize like in the sexological bodywork counseling. So people that have issues, for example, with masturbation. So I put then this into the relationship. So when we do relationship readings, it's just not talking about, I don't know, like what is the best strategy to communicate better? But we talk about sex, we talk about fantasies. And then I dig even deeper into that because I had different sorts of relationships. I was trying like different things. It's like open, closed, to the point in which I also got married at a certain point. It's like we're having the full range of experience at this point. How do I translate this for people? I start to observe, how does it work with attachment? Because I was reading all this book about attachment as part of the program. Then I did a course about consent, and that was the issue. I was looking at the astrology of it. Nothing. Like that. I mean, some colleagues will listen to this will be like, Giorgia, there are books, but lots of books about relationships are either outdated, homophobic. Again, context of culture. I get it. You wrote this book in 1975. I get it. But now it doesn't work as much. If you're writing me, if Venus is squaring Uranus is a person that could be like someone that has some perversions or being bisexual. I think we should frame this better. So I made this research, and then we look at relationship books. You have lots of this. I'm a Taurus, you're a Scorpio. The sun is not the relevant relationship-wise. Then I start looking at attachment. You look at Google, and people like, your attachment based on your sun sign. Doesn't make any sense again. So I sat with it, same process. I don't like how things are. We dig even more. So I started this research with it was like 90 charts, did lots of interviews with people around their fantasies, what they like, what is the relationship constellation, what has been working with them, which kind of fears or blockages they have. And I did this study that I brought to the astrological conference. We have this conference once a year in which speakers bring some things. So I put all this big data that I collected like in 9 months, and I did this talk. Now I'm at this point in which I'm sitting with it like 14 years later, and lots has been happening in this. I feel there is a moment for experiencing, and then you go a moment of integration. So this is a certain moment of my life is a moment I have all this data that I've been collecting over the years in front of me. And I'm like, what do I do with this? Because I see it's very powerful with my students. You do the courses like, oh, wow, this is good. I work with my clients. They're like, wow, this is very helpful. I'm going to write the book. So it's 14 years. Next year, I'm just going to sit and write the thing. Because I think it could help people to feel loved in a way that feels good. Because there is this general, taboo and guilt around what we feel and how we feel it. Because you watch movies and you have this narrative. But most of us have very different needs. A person is like, I don't want to cheat, but really monogamy, it just doesn't work for me. Great. I mean, but sometimes you need this external. This external is no validation. It's even like giving you the permission to give yourself the permission. See with that, how does they feel? Because they're going to be if you are born in a certain way, in the big schemes of things, there are other people that are going to be aligned with that. It's just not you. Also, we're not we're not as special as we think we are. We are unique in a way, but we're not. Like, if I look at I have like 20, 30 readings per month. 4 issues, hey? We're running, but the substance is that. You know, sometimes I look at my clients, I'm like, I could have said that, you know, just like, I relate, I've been there. So, yeah, so that could be another thing to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually recently going through that part of the relationship course. And another thing I really liked that you shared was, you know, the way we relate romantically or otherwise is not static, right? It can be activated by transits, right? By where the current planets and where they are and how they're interacting with our charts. So I like that you also said that. It's like, you know, maybe you won't be straight your whole life. Maybe you think you're gay and you never know, really. Yeah.
We have this idea that we have these monolithic blocks, but the amazing thing with the astrology, you know, I've been knowing my chart for some long time now, right? So put numbers. It's not a cycle, it's a spiral. Because once you get a level of understanding on something, if you're interested, if you're not, it's okay, you know, because you can stay in this loop. It's your own right. You're like, you know, I don't want to face it. Right. But, you know, low investment, low reward, right? But with relating is the same. So when you explore Mars on one level, I mean, what it could happen, for example, Mars is the way in which we express what we're attracted to, like our limbic brain, the basic brain that is like, yeah, you know, I want to have sex with that person. I don't care what they're doing. I don't know where they're working. It's this more chemical thing. But Mars also has to do with my drive. So if I'm in a relationship that is moving, I mean, my root, my pelvis, my genital energy, this is going to expand other things in your life, in which maybe you could feel more turned on by more things, or you get so much energy from the relationship that maybe you're putting this in a project. You know, when we're looking at the house of sex, the 8th house, it's also the house of other people resources. It's the house of taboos. So you can invest this sexual relationship energy in many places, and it could shift. And I hope it will shift. I mean, just go figure. You have a narrative about what you like, for example, sexually. The problem is that we don't know our options, because if I don't know that it's possible to have options, I won't ask myself anything. And that's, go back, culture, our conditioning. You know, I was born in the south of Sicily, and that's, I think we also really underestimate right now the topic of difference, because we're having this Neptune in Pisces. This could be a full podcast, but Neptune in Pisces, we are in this multicultural moment, right? In which we are all connected, the globalism, we are moving everywhere, we can work from anywhere. There are lots of tricky dynamics connected to that, because the chart is determined by the place and the time in which you were born. The place in which you were born plays a role. So we cannot act like that doesn't matter. It's all your ancestry. I mean, I see this myself. I could be as a queer, I'm still a Sicilian woman that grew up in Sicily in a, you know, and then, for example, when I got married, it really came up. When I see the way in which I relate with people, there is this very southern thing that comes in me, like this passionate. I mean, I don't see it because I grow up with this. But when I move abroad, it's like, oh, that's a thing. Like, you know, right now, that thing is not that triggered. I see that here physically, I don't feel to push as much, for example, with my Mars, because there is a relevance with the culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say here.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I just like really resonated with that. And I think, yeah, especially with the kind of circles of people that we tend to interact with, you know, we're both people that have moved different places. I think it's really easy to feel like you kind of leave so much behind when you move somewhere, but you always bring yourself with you. And I think it is important to not forget your own cultural, familial context, even if, you know, there was some difficulties with it, or you don't like parts of it, but it is totally part of you. And I also relate to although I grew up in Canada, my family is very Southern Italian. And so culturally, that was still very much a part of me. And when I lived in Germany, I really felt out of place in a weird way in terms of like the broader cultural context of Germany. Obviously, Berlin as a city is a little bit different. But then now that I live in the Mediterranean, I don't live in Italy, but I live very close. It's like, oh, these are my people. Like, I don't feel weird, like this feels like my, family dynamics, right? It works,
And that's okay. Also, you don't have to force yourself to be comfortable anywhere all the time. There is also a branch of astrology around that. Like, the place in which you are is going to influence the way in which you shape your energies. So actually you can find specific points for specific things if you want to work with certain stuff. But it's always important to look at these roots. The roots in astrology is the fourth house where we're coming from. And it's so interesting because it's the opposite of the house of career, like where you're going to with the public. So there is this dynamic public-private. So in order to go towards the future, there is a part of the fourth house you have to leave behind. You have to leave the nest, right? Like if you don't leave the nest, then you could be like too much like into someone else's dynamics that are not yours. But it's a polarity. It works together because otherwise I'm just going to go out in the world. But then where is the tribal meaning of celebration that comes out of it? And especially moving. I work with lots of experts. I mean, I relocate in 5 different countries, so it's a bit of a topic for me. There are some cultural misconceptions, for example, around aging and friendships. Going back for a second into the relationship topic, it's like we don't give as much importance to friendships as much as to love relationships, and I think this is a real issue. Because like with age, and there is also this general thing, I mean, you see this in social media, like I'm 30, I just want to watch Netflix. Like, I get it, but we need to do the work, especially if you're moving. You thrive and you blossom in community, in any sort of thing, connecting also the business part. Friends are also connections. You get things if you're going out there. Like network is fundamental. Besides marketing, social media, you gotta go places. You gotta meet people. This is how things are gonna expand. And when you relocate to new places, sometimes I see there are like also the small bubbles. For example, with the expats, they also could be very alienating in his own way. How much you want to interact with the place, how much do you feel present to the place. So it's always like a two-way process. How much of my roots I'm bringing and how much of the place I'm giving an offering. Because when we're going to a new land, this is not your land. This is not your land. These are not your rules. Your land, your rules. Then it's a different story. But then we, our colonialist part, like we take for granted we can take everything everywhere. Like at the same time, though, can you see that I studied intercultural mediation? It goes back all to that. It was a very long round to get there. It's important not to be fully assimilated, because culturally you could be integrated or you could be assimilated. Like I shared this reel about living in the UK, right? So I moved to the UK. I'm Italian, and this friend of mine is a comedian. There's this video about, how miserable it is to move to the UK. He was doing jokes about colonialism. It's like, when a person from the UK looks at you and says, like, wow, your Italian is so much, like your English is so much better than my Italian. And it's like, yeah, of course, because I need to speak the language you don't, like, actually, yeah. Or they say it's like, oh, your English is so good for being an Italian person. And I'm like, this is a very interesting way to frame a compliment. Anyway, so I shared this thing because it's like that's how I feel. I still have the right to have an opinion on the place in which I am. It's not the fact that I'm somewhere I have to take everything about that, because the person is like, oh, someone wrote me, oh, but you moved to the UK. If you don't like it, you can leave. It's like, it's not about that.
Yeah.
But let's be mindful about moving to a place and completely like absorbing everything without any sorts of inner judgment, Like something's going to get triggered because you come from a different culture, you have a different language. It's fine. You know, you don't have to follow also the full protocol of doing all the proper English. I mean, I will manage anyway, like there's no way. But that's, you know, I had to make peace with that, because you're always in this thing is like, you're going to be in a new culture. And when it's so different, like especially like English one, northern ones, I would say, you want to deal with it. Can you deal with it? You know, I've been living in cold places for 10 years, and I think I'm pretty much done with that, because I had to ask myself, is like, can I do more of this? Maybe not. And I completely underestimated that, the crazy mass we were talking about.
Yeah.
Go, see and conquer. But it comes with a price. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. So let's talk about karma. Let's shift gears a little bit, but maybe
let's
not.
talk about everything. Okay.
Yeah. So
what do you want to talk about?
I guess just how do you define it, and how has it become such an important part of your work and your, you know, astrological paradigm that you work with?
So karma for me, I mean, means action, right? So it's just an action. So first of all, I just explain that it's not this thing, you know, that's your karma, bitch, you know, like action, reaction. So we just have to keep in touch with the fact that if I'm doing something or if I'm saying something, this is gonna resonate in space and time. Some things are connected to dynamics of our childhood. Some things are connected with dynamics of other lifetimes. Okay. So that's a very, very short way to put it. With the work, the first school I studied was the School of Evolutionary Astrology. And you know, when I read about it, because it's very like philosophical, theosophical, I just fell in love with it. It's this idea of like previous, like this felt like we got so much space in the universe, and we just think we have this one life. Okay, I mean, again, I think we just think we are too special, but my 2 cents on that, like there is a way more space for that. And then I start studying shamanism, and you start realizing that there are definitely other things around us. Let's say, you know, it's just like we are in a great amount of company around us. So once you make this sort of discovery, you can't go back. So when I was looking at these things from evolutionary lenses, because it's like, you know, when you're working with karmic stuff, there are like different ways to work with it. Because people think you come for a karmic reading, and I tell you, Bianca, in a previous lifetime, I don't know, you were a cook in this restaurant. But then the question is like, what am I going to do with that? Because I'm very, I mean, you know me, I'm very practical in a sense. Like, it's about cracking the chart. You know, it's just like, how can we break the system? The idea when looking at the chart karmically is more getting the feeling of it. Like, okay, in a previous lifetime, you were in this work that probably has to do like with food or, you know, taking care of things. And then I could see some other dynamics that took place. But I don't know, like there is a wound around betrayal. So then what I asked the person, if in this lifetime, because that's what happens, we repeat until we realize things. If they had a similar situation like that, it's like, you know, we've been in a work in which you're providing something, but someone betrayed you for this is a reason. Yes. So there are usually dynamics, past, present, and future are not linear. So because, you know, we have to go beyond this linearity. And that's the issue, going back to karma. It's like, yeah, Giorgia, but every action has an effect. So we tend to think about the cause effect, like in this line. The problem is that it goes all over the place. Like when you do shamanic rituals sometimes, or when you do invocations, you may do this for you, or you may do this for Bianca in another dimension. For example, if you're having a karmic relationship with someone here, and you break the pattern here, you may solve this in another dimension. There could be another Bianca having an amazing relationship with this person, in another shape. And I think also this could help us. Some people could say this is delusional. I'm totally fine with that. I'm not the biggest fan of everything has to be rational, because I think if we take the magic away, it could get a bit dry, life. But is this idea that maybe some things don't work out here? We are spreading this energy elsewhere, and that's fine. I love to think this about some former partners. Like, this time didn't work, but we managed to sort things out together, and I learned a lot out of it. So that's how we put the karma into place. It's like we observe these old stories we are falling in. We are reading, like, we're exploring the stories of our families as well. The fact that we don't talk, we don't talk about our past. We don't know the stories of our grandparents. We don't know the stories of our land. Most people don't know which way they were born. And if you think of it, this is crazy. Because, like, this is literally the most important, probably, event of our life, deciding to come down here. Because that's a declaration of intent, and in astrology, we say, because sometimes I could see the way in which you got delivered. Is the delivery was complicated, was complex for some reason. Because when we were born, for example, you almost died. That's the first imprint of your life. So you're going to carry this with you in some sort of, this fear. This fear is there. But people, we ask, are like, no, or we say, no, it was fine. And that's the other issue with lots of mothers, that is like, they didn't die, so they think they were okay. And then I'm like, are you really sure? I'm like, hey, after the reading, maybe ask your mom. And sometimes people write me emails. They were like, oh yeah, you were right. My mom told me that it took almost 48 hours to get me out of the thing, and they just didn't know what to do. And she was like, but women undermining the pain. I didn't die. The kid is alive. So yeah, it was, not of a biggie. Like, so is this answering the question? I'm going off tangent.
Honestly, don't even know what I was asking about karma. No, you're not going off topic. It's just the trajectory. All good. But it's interesting because, even on a biological level, the conditions of your birth can determine so much. Like, for example, my mom had a C-section with me, and that means I don't have certain, like, gut flora that, babies that went through the vaginal canal did, and, so for me, it's like, I gotta take my probiotics and make sure that's working, this is just me going on my Virgo moon tangents, and like 6th house tangent, but it's really so important. And I also, like, in my kind of doing inner child work journey, I asked my mom about my birth and, like, got more details about it. And I just assumed it was fine and chill. And then I was like, oh, a C-section is not necessarily chill, like,
And there is a big Martian message into that, because, the C-section has to do, it's the dynamic of Mars and Uranus. So there are, like, two different kind of reactive energies, because basically there's not the push. So we, like, part of our Martian immune defenses and our capacity to attack is not there, because in some sort of deeper way, we register with our bodies, like, my mom didn't push for me. I come from a different Uranus. So we are opening this bigger, something that is even bigger than family itself, different ways of dealing with the world. Because we're bringing, like, a literally different paradigm. You're not coming down from here. You're coming out in this direction. So there is something new that is coming out of this. The problem is that we tend to underestimate biology a lot at the moment. It's just like, there are even some topics you can talk about. Again, I don't care, but it's just like, if you look at your own physical body, if you got planets in the first house, right, like what is very visible, I have Venus, Moon in the first house in Pisces. I have giant feet. Like it's 43. This has been started in my life. Like first houses, they're so visible because I always have issues finding shoes, and I was born with like an extra bone on my foot. Like I have foot surgery. So like this topic of feet, I grew up with that is very clear from the moment in which I was born. Has been dictating the narrative of lots of other things because having this extra bone, my posture is a bit like this. So this brought like other things like with Pisces, like I just look like this fluffy thing that is just moving all over the place because of the Pisces placements. So yeah, observe your body. That's my take. It doesn't matter what you see like around sex, biology, gender, politics. Just observe how the body works, and then you can see this how it's reflected in the chart. From it's quite easy. I mean, there are some people specialize in medical astrology, so that's their field, but you could see if there is something going on. For example, Saturn is the planet of structure, but also teeth and posture. Like as soon as was on my ascendant, I got this issue with my teeth, like from the book that you got from with your back, and it's like, oh, are you holding too much Saturnian stuff, for example? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how, because I think sometimes, especially when people are skeptical about astrology or these sort of things, they think it has no relation to reality almost, but it's like these things are, if you really understand it and study it, they're literally physical. They're not just like, oh, we're talking about this. Oh, it's an ideas. Oh, it's like pie in the sky, whatever. It's like, no, it's physical. It's very physical.
Yeah, I mean, you got always this thing, you can make the argument with the moon and the tides. It's like all the animals, all the trees, everything is aligned to the energy of the planet. But for some weird reasons, we think that we are way better than birds. So this doesn't apply to us. Like, what? Yeah. And even that, because like the problem is our paradigm. So since we got like this Uranian age in which there is, I'm an Aquarian myself, like technology advancement. Yeah, I'm all for it, interested. But we go into this rational, like mechanistic way of thinking. So we are in the age of hyper-rationalism. This comes with great limits because on one side we're having this idea of progress as like, again, something that is linear connecting to the machine, but this is not necessarily the case. But we associate this with that, completely like bypassing the world of magic, the world of the intangible, the world of myth. We need myth. We need mythology. We need the capacity to dream. We need the capacity to connect. Because if it's all just about 1 + 1 = 2, are we done? Like, really? Yeah. But I get it. I get it. What some people, I don't think astrology is for I don't think any system is for anyone. Even with this thing, I see this with my students. I see with the aspirant astrologers. I support them in their journey into how to set the business, how to provide good readings. And that's what they're all struggling with because, they got there super enthusiastic. And then you got people that really genuinely get triggered by that. You know what? Whenever I'm places, I say I'm a teacher. I don't say I'm a teacher of astrology. That doesn't help. No one tells. I mean, on Instagram, it's like, you're so cool, you're an astrologer. Real world, like you have to be a bit mindful and on a very practical level. If I'm asking for a loan, I'm just saying I have an online business. Because some people have so much judgment, you have no idea. And it's in their right. It's like, okay, that you feel that this tool wouldn't work for you. You don't resonate with it. Great. Then you got other things, for example, even the gene keys. I love the gene keys. And it's some sort of oracle, right? It's just like, either you believe it or not, the book is such an amazing thing to read. And so it's like, okay, maybe you can get that in that way. Even with numerology. I mean, numerology and astrology has been there for a long time. Every astronomer was an astrologer. I mean, were they all idiots? What was Galileo dumb? Really? Like, no, they were not, but now they are. It's like, and that's the problem. To do like our job is very complicated. It's lots of numbers. It's numbers. It takes years. It's lots of responsibility. It's not easy, and it requires studying other things. If you're an astrologer but you don't study culture, you won't be probably a good astrologer, because you have to relate to people's issues. So you have to read what people are struggling with. You have to talk to people. Like, you have to go where people go. It's a very social profession to have, in a way. And then you got people like, I'm not interested in any of that. Fine. I'm not the goddess of astrology. I don't take it personally. I don't care. We don't care. Can we deliver this message to the crowds, Bianca? Astrologers don't care if you don't believe in astrology. We sleep at night, really.
Yes, I don't lose sleep over anyone's skepticism. I'm just like, you know what? You believe in whatever you believe in, whatever works for you. If that works for you, cool. If your life is moving along the way you want it to, totally fine. Doesn't bother me. Yeah, it's really funny. Like, people get really combative sometimes, and they're like trying to prove you wrong. I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. You're being a Taurus about it, but it's okay. if you're not on board. You're so right.
I think it's the way in which you're coming across certain things. It's just like, for example, one of my rules that has to do with all these sorts of things is like, don't go to if the person wants the help, they're gonna ask. Don't force you. Like, I never tell people, you want to have a reading, come to me for a reading. You never heard this of me.
No, that's a bot. If you hear that from Giorgia, it's a fake Instagram account bot.
Like, really, I'm like, no. And then I talk to people, and always a bit, even if they're in public spaces, I go to meetings and then we talk, and then I'm like, yeah, sure, I could leave you my business card, and if you want, you call. But people come, it's like, we don't force it, because if I force it, then I get it, and that's something that we do at the beginning. When you're an aspirant astrologer, first you get triggered because you feel like how deep this thing is, and you generally want other people to understand, that you just feel misunderstood. So your wound of not belonging and not being heard gets triggered. So you go to this phase of like, why people are so stupid that they don't get it. Then phase 2, you're fine with it, and just like you really don't care. But it's our journey, because also, sometimes you would like to do something that is more socially accepted. But if you're dealing with any of these arts, you're looking for social validation, do something else. Really, don't do this.
I know, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
My mom is like, when I feel for them. I mean, I can't help it. When I go to Sicily, and she's just like, you don't need to tell everyone, what you're doing. And then, my uncle is calling. He's like, yeah, the astrological work is doing great. And I'm like, damn it. And I'm like, it's your problem. It's your bias. I respect that. I don't need you to change your mind about me, because it's very distant from what I do. But at the same time, you can ask me to lie about my work. So it's also, finding this thing in which you don't need to have, especially if you want to do this professionally, the validation of the people around you. Just don't get on my way. That's all I'm asking. Yeah. I can't lie around my work. And if you feel like lying around your work, then ask yourself some questions.
Yes.
Unless you have to rent a place. That's
unless you're what? Sorry?
Unless you have to rent a place. So very practical, Virgo, linear things. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, I'm just enjoying this conversation so much. What was I going to ask? I feel like I'm looking at all my questions. I'm like, boring.
Bianca, we can make it boring fun. We can
Yeah,
make
that's true.
everything. Give me a boring question and we're going to make it fun.
Okay, it's not a boring question, but I guess we kind of went back to business talk anyway.
Yeah, let's talk about business.
Yeah, so what are, like, going kind of really basic, like, what are a couple things to look at in your chart when it comes to business stuff that you find are really important when you're working with clients?
Yeah, so I work with entrepreneurs. I do like these full packages, like these VIP days in which we just literally, I do like a business plan, setting dates based on their charts. Be mad, very fun. What do we look at? We look at first at the old chart. Like the old chart can tell you how can you express yourself in the business, because the problem is that we think we have to do business in the same way. It's not going to work. Very important. House number 2, the second house, is the house is like how you make money. If you don't have any planets there, again, misconception, you don't have any planets in a house, nothing's going to happen there. It doesn't mean that. Your second house starts with a sign. Look at the sign. The sign is going to give you an idea. It's like how to make that money. Like literally how this moves. In my case, it's in Aries. I got Jupiter. What I do, I teach and I literally kick people in the houses for a living, and people pay me for that. I bring new things, I support them, things move, right? Then we want to look at the 6th house. The 6th house has to do with our routines. It's like how we're dealing with our daily life. So it can give us answers around, do I want to work for myself? Do I want to work for others? Because the 6th house is the employee, is the person that works in service. So if you go lots of 6th house placements, you need to have very specific routines. So if you go Uranus in the 6th house, that is the planet of chaos, your routines are a bit unstructured. So maybe you want to have a job that has a routine that you coordinate and is not coordinated by the rest of the world. Or you work for someone else in which, for example, you can choose the shifts, right? And then most important is the house number 10 and this thing that we call the MC. So if you're looking at the MC, if some of you are looking at charts, you got this MC on top. That is the beginning of the 10th house. That represents the way in which you're showing yourself to the public. That is fundamental, because the sign that is there is the sign that goes on there. Like we are talking at the moment, what I'm giving you is my 10th house energy. So you're seeing my Sagittarian, right? It's just like the boldness, whatever, the teaching and that sign needs to be cultivated in order for your work to be seen. This sign is naturally opposite your 4th house. Is naturally opposite the energy you had growing up. So don't expect this to be automatic. If you have planets in the 10th house and not planets in the 4th, it could be easier. Like in my case, everything is in the 10th. We talk business. We love it. If we got lots of 4th house, you don't have lots of 10th. There is lots of like what my mother want me to do for whatever. I don't want to leave the country. My father at a shop wants to give the shop to me. There is a certain kind of representation of the past in you. Yeah, so we take this into consideration. So we want to look at the signs and the planets in the 10th, and we need to give them space. So if I have Uranus in the 10th house, I have Uranus in the 10th house. Again, planet of weird, unpredictable things. You got to give yourself the permission to do a job that is weird or innovative or non-linear in some way. So then the question is, ask myself the question, I give myself the answer. Okay, Giorgia, then if these things are already in us, why we're just not doing it? Why I have Uranus in the 10th house, but still I'm doing a boring job? We look at the old chart, but it takes an effort, like to embody our chart, especially if you go the red lines, these aspects that we call, like there are some other energies that are interfering with us for karmic reasons. It's work. Because, I can tell you, yeah, you got an amazing Venus in the 10th house in Pisces. You could be a voice into the world. You could be, an amazing singer. But if you don't take singing classes, So that's like three basic things I would totally look at. But special focus, if you have to look just one, look at the 10th. The 10th has lots of answers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I also have my midheaven in Sagittarius, and I'm still getting comfortable with that teacher role because, you know, I never thought I would teach anything or embody this, I don't know, kind of like more leader.
It comes in different shapes, you know, because
Yeah.
then, you know, we bring this to another deeper level. Like Sagittarius has to do with Jupiter. So we look where is Jupiter in your chart, and that's what is your Jupiter? Is in
Leo, and it's like right on my descendant. So it's technically in the 6th, but it's right on the descendant. Yeah.
Now, you see, in your case, this has to do with other people. Like this. This is a perfect 10th house Sagittarius. We're having a conversation, you know, we're talking about things very Sagittarian. And the planet responsible is in the house of corporations. So it's like here, you're not being asked to do this alone. Just like, you know, if you're having someone that is a mirror, something that we are co-creating, maybe you can have, I don't know, a project, a school, a course. So that's the other thing. There are like tons of ways to translate, right, the meaning of the archetype, because, you know, Uranus could also be IT. So it could be the crazy astrologer, but also it could be like the dude doing like software engineering.
Yeah.
Because it's a different kind of, you know, brain having antennas that you just going places. So
Yeah.
I think your case it could be more about like being a coach, for example.
Yes, which is what I do. And I remember in the Karmic course, I had asked you a question about my second house because I'm like, money, how do I make it? What's happening? And so I also have Aries on the 2nd, but my Mars is in the 7th house. And I find one-on-one work really works for me, or even like interviewing one person on a podcast, or even if I can like bounce ideas off of one other person to help me like create new things for my business. I've really come to understand that. Like I might have the idea myself, but you know, if I work in cooperation with another business, with another person, sharing, like that's how it can really like develop and shape itself. So yeah, that really helped me.
Yeah. You see, for me, I go Sag, but it's in my second house in Aries. So literally, I'm like, if I invest in A, I get B. If I second house, it's your own material resources.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like the self-made person. So I'm like, if I'm not gonna do it, no one's gonna do it for me or with me. It doesn't mean I'm not gonna find people, but I just have to do it my way. In your case, is the coaching, the 7th house, is the one-on-one, is the relating. So you see, you're inhabiting that already, actually. So
okay, I am in my own way. Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, to kind of wrap up a little bit, what I consider more fun questions. Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
That I've selected for you. So, okay, we're at the tail end of Scorpio season as we record this podcast. What are you looking forward to this Sagittarius season?
So that's one of my favorite seasons. So Sagittarius, we expand our ideas, we are taking courses, we are talking to people. Because it's in terms of season shifts, it's probably one of the strongest because, you know, we've just been going to the underworld. Parts of our way got to die, like all the drama, With Sag is like chill, have fun, get out there, share, like do things that you were not thinking about doing before in your life. You know, Sag is like take the risk and just go. So if there is something you want to do it. Look at the house in which Sag is in your natal chart to have in a more clear, like which practical things you can do.
Yeah. Love it. Have fun. Exactly. What is a ritual that you swear by that's really important to you?
I do my morning cards every day. I have these astrological cards and I pick these cards as like one is the energy to release and one the energy to welcome for the day, so I can kind of get ready. It was very interesting because the card of the day was Gemini. In this conversation. No. And, sometimes it's so weirdly spot on that I'm like, weird. And I also do this with 3 friends of mine. Like, I've been sending them the morning card, like, every morning for, like, I think more than a year. And it's very nice because we just keep in touch. So, yeah, I like my cards, my journaling, because, yeah, I think journaling is extremely important if you're doing some spiritual work. So you take stuff and you just put it somewhere, just resting.
Yeah, totally. What's the last great book or article that you read?
So I've been reading like this all research. God, I read very geeky stuff. It's a research. I'm like, am I gonna say this? Is the connection between like your physical body and how this connects with your psyche? So again, biological stuff is like how the body works and how most of the things are related to our teeth. And like if teeth are, because like we have this 6 packs, these 6 batteries that are connected with different organs, and basically all the connect. I'm not explaining this, of course, properly, but like the connection starts with the teeth. So, for example, if you're having a moment of big stress, like your teeth are decaying faster. And every tooth corresponds to a different part of the body. So yeah, just been reading lots about meridians and points. Because you see, with astrology, it's nice. We can work on a mental level. But I think we really need physical things we need to take care of our 3-dimensional self,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
100%. Yeah. Chiron in 6th house, Virgo moon person is very on board with taking care of the body.
It's your stuff. My lack of earth is like, oh my God, I'm coming from dust and going back to dust. I'm like, okay, to elaborate a bit on that. It's not very, yeah.
Was there a particular song that got you through this Scorpio season?
Yes, it's Myth by Beach House. I'm just looking at Spotify right now. It's one of this kind of, slow rock, mellow. And there is this repetition. And the other is saddest song ever written, Through Love Waits by Radiohead, live in Oslo. It's one of these songs that the live version is a way better than the original. And then you just can go and cry in a corner. You are welcome.
Yes, love that. That's what we all need, Scorpio season, for sure. And then my last question is, what is your favorite Italian dish if you had to choose one?
Parmigiana di melanzane. It's like this eggplant thing, but I can eat cheese and I can eat eggplants, but still my favorite. What an amazing life. But and eggplants have to be fried. Just like stop doing this kind of thing without frying them. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's not a light dish. Don't make it light. Because if you on a diet, don't do the Parmigiana. If you do a sad Parmigiana, you're killing a southern Italian nonna every day. Just think about it.
Think about it. You don't want to be doing that.
No, you really don't.
Well, Giorgia, this was an absolute pleasure. So much fun. Amazingness. Thank you so much for your time. And where can everyone find you and your work?
So visionaryastrology.com is like vision air. It's not visionary. And I'm thinking about branding wise, bit suicidal, but sounds cute. So visionaryastrology.com. I'm doing courses twice a year, consultations for business, consultations about family, whatever. If you want to talk about astrology with someone and you need some support, here I am. Very active on Instagram. So I'm a meme master, an astro meme master. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Grazie tesoro, ciao.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Life Forces podcast. If you loved what was shared, got inspired, or took something valuable from it, I would love if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or even share this episode with a friend. I deeply appreciate it, and it really helps the podcast grow. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. To stay connected, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Life Forces Inc. and visit lifeforcesinc.com for more information about how to work with me. Until next time, stay you.